The Ozark Mountains stretched across the horizon, a tapestry of emerald green and deep shadows. The Peterson family, eager for a respite from their hectic routines, had rented a secluded cabin deep within the Ozarks. John Peterson, the father, yearned for a break from his demanding job, a chance to reconnect with his family amidst nature's embrace. His wife, Mary, looked forward to lazy afternoons spent reading on the porch swing, the sounds of the forest serenading her. Their two children, 10-year-old Ethan and 6-year-old Lily, were brimming with excitement, ready to explore the hidden wonders of the woods. As they drove deeper into the mountains, the sunlight began to fade, replaced by the soft glow of twilight. The cabin, nestled in a clearing at the end of a long gravel driveway, was everything they had hoped for, rustic and charming, with a wide porch overlooking a babbling brook. As John unloaded the car, Mary and the children explored their temporary home, their voices filled with laughter and anticipation, but beneath the surface of their excitement, a subtle unease began to creep in. It wasn't anything tangible, not yet, just a prickling at the back of their necks, a sense of being watched. Lily, her senses always attuned to the unseen, was the first to give voice to their unspoken fear. "Mommy," she whispered, clutching at Mary's hand, "I don't like it here. It feels funny." Mary, her heart squeezing with a mother's instinct to protect, knelt down and looked into her daughter's eyes. The first day in the Ozarks passed without incident. John took Ethan fishing by the river, their laughter echoing through the trees. Mary settled on the porch swing with a book, while Lily, armed with her trusty magnifying glass, explored the woods behind the cabin. But as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the clearing, the air grew heavy with an unspoken tension. A strange stillness settled over the forest, the usual symphony of birdsong replaced by an unsettling silence. When John and Ethan returned from their fishing trip, Mary couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. "Did you two see anything strange out there?" she asked. John chuckled. "Just a couple of squirrels and a grumpy-looking raccoon." That night, as the family gathered around the old wooden table for dinner, the sense of unease intensified. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and sending shivers down their spines. Lily, usually a chatterbox at mealtimes, sat silent, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "Lily, honey, what's wrong?" Mary asked. Lily, her small body trembling slightly, pointed a shaking finger towards the fireplace. "The book," she whispered. It moved. The book, a heavy volume on local folklore, was now lying open on the floor. "It was probably just the wind, sweetie," John said, forcing a smile. But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Later that night, as a storm raged outside, the Peterson family huddled together in the living room, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of the fireplace. Ethan, trying to appear brave, recounted spooky stories he'd heard at school, while Mary knitted silently. Only Lily remained silent, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, a sound so primal, so filled with raw terror, that it sent chills down their spines. It wasn't a human scream, but something altogether more guttural, more animalistic. John, his heart pounding, jumped to his feet and rushed to the window, peering out into the darkness. The storm raged on, rain lashing against the glass, wind howling through the trees. But there was no sign of anything that could have made such a sound. The scream, fading into the storm's roar, left a chilling silence in its wake. John, his heart pounding, strained to hear anything over the wind's fury. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of danger. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows that played tricks on his mind. Lily, her face buried in her mother's side, whimpered, "It's closer now. I can hear it breathing." Ethan, his face ashen, clung to his father's arm. "What is it, Dad?" he whispered. John, though terrified himself, tried to project an air of calm. "It's just the storm, son," he said, but deep down a primal fear gnawed at his gut. This was no ordinary storm. A low scratching sound, barely audible over the wind and rain, sent a fresh wave of terror through the room. It seemed to be coming from the wall behind the fireplace, a slow, deliberate scraping that set their teeth on edge. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, morphing into a rhythmic thumping that vibrated through the floorboards. Lily, her small body trembling, whispered, "It's trying to get in." John, his mind racing, grabbed the heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace. A blinding flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. And then, through the thin wooden walls, they saw it. Standing at the edge of the woods, its silhouette a grotesque mockery of human form, was a creature that defied description. Its eyes, burning with a cold, malevolent intelligence, seemed to pierce through the walls, fixing on the terrified family inside. A collective gasp escaped the Petersons' lips. Lily screamed, burying her face in her mother's chest. Ethan, his eyes wide with terror, could only stammer, "What? What is that?" John, his grip tightening on the iron poker, felt a surge of adrenaline, the primal instinct to protect his family, overriding his fear. The creature, as if sensing their gaze, let out a deafening roar. It lunged towards the cabin, its movement surprisingly fast for something so large. "Run!" John screamed, grabbing Ethan's hand. They burst out into the storm, the wind and rain, lashing at their faces. The forest floor, slick with rain and shrouded in darkness, became a treacherous labyrinth. John, his lungs burning, risked a glance over his shoulder. The monstrous silhouette, illuminated by flashes of lightning, was gaining on them. "Mary, we can't outrun it," John shouted. "We need to hide." John's eyes darted frantically, searching for any refuge. Then he saw it. A towering oak, its trunk split down the middle, creating a narrow crevice. "There," he yelled, pointing towards the ancient tree. John, pushing aside his terror, made a fateful decision. He shoved Mary and the children towards the oak. "Get inside. I'll try to slow it down." Mary, her maternal instincts screaming for her to stay with John, knew they had no choice but to follow his desperate plan. She scrambled into the narrow space within the oak's trunk, pulling Ethan and Lily after her. Ethan, his young face a mask of terror, whimpered, "Dad, don't leave us." Lily, surprisingly, had gone silent. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the grotesque figure approaching her father. Mary, her heart breaking for her husband's sacrifice, pulled Ethan closer. But Lily continued to stare, a strange calm settling over her. She reached out a small hand. as if to touch the creature that terrified her family. The creature, momentarily distracted by Lily's unexpected sound, paused in its pursuit. John, seizing the opportunity, charged, his makeshift spear held high. The creature, its gaze snapping back to John, roared in fury. It swung a massive arm, its fist connecting with John's chest, sending him flying backwards. John crumpled to the ground, the air knocked from his lungs. Mary screamed, a primal cry of anguish and despair. Ethan, his eyes wide with horror, struggled against his mother's grip. But Lily continued to make that strange, guttural sound, her eyes never leaving the creature. And to their astonishment, the creature hesitated. The first faint hint of dawn light began to filter through the storm clouds. Silence descended upon the forest, heavy and absolute, broken only by the patter of rain and the distant rumble of retreating thunder. The monstrous figure was gone, vanished as quickly as it had appeared. John, his chest aching, struggled to his feet, his gaze searching the shadows. "Is it gone?" Ethan whispered. Mary, her arm still wrapped protectively around her children, cautiously peered out from their hiding place. Lily, her small hand still outstretched, turned to her family, her eyes wide and luminous. "It's okay," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "It's going away now." And to their astonishment, she began walking, not towards the cabin, but deeper into the forest. Section 2. The Long Road. Towards Safety and Uncertainty. John, his chest throbbing with each breath, his body screaming in protest, knew they had no choice but to follow their daughter. He reached out and took Mary's hand, his grip reassuring. "We have to trust her," he said, his voice raspy. "She knows what she's doing." And so they followed Lily, their small guide, leading them through the storm-ravaged wilderness. The forest, once a place of terror, now seemed to part before them as if guided by an unseen force. They walked for what seemed like hours, the rain gradually subsiding to a gentle drizzle, the first rays of dawn painting the eastern sky with hues of pink and gold. As they emerged from the forest, they found themselves on a deserted country road, the asphalt slick with rain, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and pine. In the distance, they could see the faint glow of headlights approaching, a wave of relief so profound it brought tears to their eyes, washed over them. They had escaped the nightmare. They were safe. But as they stumbled towards the approaching vehicle, John, Mary, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, something fundamental and unsettling. They had survived the night, but the memory of the creature and the chilling knowledge of Lily's connection to it would forever haunt their waking hours. Section 1. Scars of the Ozarks. A family forever changed. The headlights grew closer, piercing the pre-dawn mist that clung to the Ozark road. A battered pickup truck slowed to a stop beside the huddled figures of the Peterson family. The driver, a grizzled old farmer, took one look at their faces and knew they'd seen something unnatural. He didn't ask questions, not then. He simply opened the door to his truck and ushered them inside. As they huddled together, John, Mary, and Ethan couldn't help but steal glances at Lily. She sat between them, her face serene, almost peaceful. Gone was the wide-eyed terror. In its place was a stillness that sent shivers down their spines. It was as if a part of their little girl had been touched by something ancient and unknowable. The truck rumbled down the road, carrying them away from the darkness of the Ozarks. But the Petersons knew they weren't returning the same. They carried the scars of that night etched upon their souls. The Ozarks would forever hold a different meaning for the Peterson family.